right now, everybody should be looking into implementing some type of AI interface into their application. Now, there are many ways to do this. It could be something as small as if you're creating, let's say, if you have a project management app and you need to find the name of a project, or you need to generate the name of a project, you could have AI do that for you. Now, a lot of the times, these are small delighters. They're not necessarily things that are going to make or break your core value proposition, but it's enough to make somebody say, "Oh yeah, well this app has AI, so it's better than this other app."
Welcome to another amazing episode of the Tech Business Roundtable podcast, brought to you by Equa.tech, the leader in digital marketing for tech companies. We want to first take a moment to thank you for sharing this podcast with your friends and on social media and helping us grow week after week. Meet our host of today's TBR episode, Ryan Davies. Ryan is the Director of Marketing of Equa.tech and is a dynamic leader in driving business transformation through technology. Over to you, Ryan.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Business Roundtable podcast show. This is a podcast show dedicated to shining a spotlight on tech innovators, entrepreneurs, founders, and the compelling narratives behind the movements they've established. I'm your host, Ryan Davies, and I'm hosting today's discussion on mastering mobile app development with Ken Vermeil. Ken, thank you so much for being here today. This is going to be a fun one.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm super excited and glad to be here. And I'm glad to help people learn more about mobile app development and building apps that people love to use.
I'm super excited to squeeze every drop of knowledge for our first conversation here. Before we started, we kind of already had a discussion about how deep this can go and how much fun this is going to be. So I'm excited to see where this goes. But for our listeners, a little bit about Ken. With Vermilion Sky, they collaborate with companies aiming to create mobile and web applications. So they use a US-based team crafting the initial MVP, supporting internal development of teams during expansion, and really are a reliable partner in product development. Notably, he's done a number of startups like ArtFair and OpinionUp that have entrusted Vermilion Sky to help construct their applications from end to end. And he has a meticulous understanding in client requirements, in timely product development for immediate success, securing funding, generating revenue, facilitating enhancements. This is the go-to guy in this space, I think. So with 15 years of experience in developing and delivering digital products, his mission is really to assist entrepreneurs in building products that resonate with users, that will stand the test of time and grow with their business. And I think from there, natural if you could share a little bit more about your journey into the world of mobile app development and what inspired you to start Vermilion Sky.
Oh yeah. Well, the interesting thing is my background is from development. So I have a bachelor's degree in video game development. And so essentially it meant that I wanted to go to school to make video games, and kind of going into actually making a video game, it's incredibly intense, incredibly fun. And the moment that I got out of school, had a couple of interesting offers. And one of the things that kind of pushed me away from the video game industry was the overworked culture, right? Essentially, it was common to work 80 plus hours a week and do all that stuff. So I was like, no, I'll do something easier, which is start a business. In where I proceeded to then work 80 hours a week.
Right.
So it was, it was essentially I was going to work 80 hours a week anyway. So I started my own business. But even before that, a couple of agencies ended up hiring me and using me as like their engine. So they'd go out, they'd sell a bunch of business and say, "Hey Ken, can you build this?" And I'd help them build it. And I was a kid and I was like, sure, and throw challenges at me. Mainly because again, in my mind, I'm just like, oh, you want me to make an app? I make video games, right? And it was fun. It was really fun to understand and like see the process of building an app from scratch, and having that app turn into a business. One of the first apps that we built was an app to determine whether or not kids would have a snow day from school. And it was interesting because it was one of those. It was at the very beginning of the App Store, and where uh, every app was like 99 cents. And I remember we launched it that year. There weren't too many snow days, but we saw that our client made a lot of money. They had a lot of $1 downloads, and they were featured in the news, and they came back and we did updates, and it was a really good experience. And I saw that and I thought, well, I believe that I could do it myself. And so I started Vermilion Sky. And from then, we've just been helping startups build mobile applications from idea to conception to managing the front end, the back end, and essentially doing anything that we need to do to allow them to be successful. Because it's hard, but once you have a good formula, then you're you can move forward.
I mean, to be completely customizable, yet there's certain pieces of that template that need to be there, right? So you can repeat some of the
Oh yeah.
processes, but then have that there. And I mean, Ken, where I am, we've already had 2 snow days this year. It's only November, like, it's early. So we recorded this podcast. We're at the end of November, and we've had 2. So they happen a lot where in my neck of
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah, I mean the
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
oh yeah, the cool thing is we like hooked into the National Weather Service. We like pulled in a bunch of APIs,
Very
and then
cool.
we had this cool formula to like determine like it's a 78% chance of a snow day, or it's a 22% of the chance of a snow day. So it was awesome.
For parents looking to prepare, that's gold. So yeah, but
Oh
but
yeah.
let's talk about, like, now, right? What trends do you see kind of in the landscape of mobile app development, like especially in the context of business solutions? With your
Mhm.
experience, what are you seeing happening in sort of the changes and the offering that's out there?
Oh yeah. When it comes to building a mobile app, one of the things that I see is people kind of they essentially jump into the business opportunity too early. So the thing is, you want to validate and make sure that you have a market for your idea. So most of the time, because a business may be in business, they have a customer avatar, they are able to generate money from one service offering. It doesn't necessarily translate automatically to an application, because there are a lot of other things that make the business run
Right.
that you can't turn into technology. So you can't, yes, you can do customer service with AI, with technology, but if you're doing a white glove service and then you pivot from that to an AI, you may lose customers, and it may just not align with your business and your brand.
Right.
So what I've been seeing is more of a customer focused approach, dealing with the top 20% of the people who bring in the revenue, and only focusing on building features that generate revenue for the business from those people. That means that if somebody who's kind of not in that top 20%, if they are requesting something, it's not necessarily that you ignore them. It's hey, we'll do that later. But somebody within that top 20 cohort, if they want something, you then build that thing for them and allow yourself to reap the revenue. And when you do things that way, because development is expensive, right? Especially
Yeah.
dealing with the US team, um, we really want to make sure that anything that we are going to attempt to do is going to essentially have a downstream revenue boost for the customer. So
Right.
it doesn't make sense if we spend $100,000 only to make $20,000. It makes more sense if you spend $100,000 with us, and then you're attacking an opportunity that makes you $2 to $3 million over the course of a year. So instead, what I've seen is, it's 2023, budgets are kind of like drying up, which is fine. But in that, it forces people to think about, should we build this? Who are we building this for? Why should we build it? And will it have that downstream effect of increasing the business uh, revenue?
That I think that's a very key point, right? Is making sure that businesses align the mobile app strategy with their business goals and objectives. And like you said, sometimes that gets missed, overlooked, assumed, right? So for like the business leaders and founders that are listening here, they're looking to invest in mobile app development. Are there key considerations that they should like? Do you go through some sort of a, don't have to give your whole recipe for success, but that, those pieces where you're like, this is how you might be ready for this, or these are the things, the ducks you have to have in a row first before, like you said, you're going to invest in something and not see the ROI from it.
Yes. Yeah. So essentially, the first thing is you want to focus on doing one thing very, very well. Um, in, I guess, 10 years ago, it used to be really cool to have a very bloated application in where it does 10, 20, 30 different things. Now it makes more sense to have multiple applications, and each of those applications just do one thing. So let's say if you are creating an app that it I have to be careful. Look, I don't want to divulge anything. Well, let's say that you're creating an app, and the purpose of the app is for the app to review legal contracts, right? In that sphere, you can make it review legal contracts, you can make it generate contracts, you can make it so that you have a dual editing capability and where two people can look at it and say, there's a lot of stuff that you can do because the technology it's there.
Right.
It takes a lot of discipline to say, you know what, we're only going to focus on the contract analysis and we're not going to do anything else, because once you do that, then you have revenue. Once you have the revenue, you could reinvest that revenue into the other features again that makes sense to the top 20% of your users. So the biggest thing is validate the application without building the application. And you do that by there's a couple of ways of doing it. One, you could launch a fake product, or you can announce the product, get a small cohort of people who are interested into your product, and get to the point where you could convince them to prepay for the product, and say, hey, look, you'll have a lifetime subscription to this product. Give me $20. When you interview people, they tend to want to be nice. And people who would sit down and do a customer interview or do any type of customer development, they're going to tend to be on the nicer side. And one way to kind of break away from that is, ask them to pay you. Because if they're willing to pay you, then sure, now you've validated that.
Right.
Even if it's, $20 for a lifetime subscription of something that you haven't built yet, it's still some type of validation. And that protects you from spending too much money on something that may not work. And so that's like my biggest thing. After that, then do the research and development to figure out what type of user interface works with that customer. Focus on doing very quick 6-week iterations of product development. Well, you could do 1-week iterations, but you should bunch up your features into 6-week releases. That means every 6 weeks you're releasing something significant, something that will resonate with your customer. It doesn't necessarily have to go live out to the customer yet, but it's a good amount of time for you to say, this is something that was designed and built and launched, and it serves its purpose, and it could be sent out to the customer if we want. And so that could look like 2 weeks of design, 4 weeks of development, and launching something to a closed group of people, having them test, iterate, ensuring that you have some type of like application funnel that tracks your analytics from first download to purchase, and then just watch your analytics and see what's working and see what isn't working. After you launch, if you launch and things aren't like super perfect, that's completely fine. You need to spend the time after launch to iterate towards success and iterate towards whatever metric that you are trying to hit for your business.
I mean, that's it. You've mentioned a few times, right, how important that user-centric design is, and making sure that you are validating along the way, right? you want to make sure, I came from an area like this before. I've done some custom software dev and sales work for it. So of course I'm your worst enemy in the fact of I can promise anybody the moon that it'll solve everybody's problem. And then the developers and engineers go, okay, now you've promised all of this in a release. What are we going to do here? Right. So but you're absolutely bang on with that. Like, you have to have that customization to meet the apps of the specific businesses and the specific users and things like that. For when we talk about, maybe some common challenges that business face when it comes to developing mobile apps, or some untapped opportunities that might exist for businesses that they are overlooking in mobile apps. Do you have some examples there where you're like, this is something everyone runs into, or this is an area that people should be looking at that's so underutilized and we could take advantage of, right?
Yeah, well, right now everybody should be looking into implementing some type of AI interface into their application. Now, there are many ways to do this. It could be something as small as if you're creating, let's say if you have a project management app and you need to find the name of a project, or you need to generate the name of a project, you could have AI do that for you. Now, a lot of the times, these are small delighters. They're not necessarily things that are going to make or break your core value proposition, but it's enough to make somebody say, "Oh yeah, well this app has AI, so it's better than this other app."
Right.
And now that like bubble is not going to last forever. Eventually, all apps will use AI in some way or another, and it's going to be less of like a marketing kind of gimmick into just something that we just assume that all applications use some type of artificial intelligence or generative capabilities to make the experience of using the app better. So I would say, you don't have to read like a AI 101 book, but you could look at people who are within your current business space and seeing how they're leveraging AI. And then also look at people who are not necessarily within what you want to do. So there are plenty of times where even for us, like we see people use AI in their marketing materials, and we're like, oh, hey, we should kind of leverage some of these AI tools in our marketing materials. It may not be a one-to-one translation, but it could be something that you can definitely build and market. It's a great way to also just get new users into your application because they're going to be curious. Hey, we're using this new AI feature to do this. We're using this new AI feature to help you get from A to B quicker. And that's another thing about kind of having applications, because apps are simultaneously getting more complex and simple at the same time. We want to kind of leverage AI even in the onboarding experience to ensure that people are moving towards where we want them to move in the application.
I think that, again, you've talked about this too, and you mentioned it a few times in a couple of different responses here, but I really want to touch on it, that like many businesses already have an app that they're using, that they're used to, or most commonly have established systems that are like integrated. A lot of times they're even siloed. So you're using multiple systems and you want to integrate across all of them. I know this is an area of expertise for you. So how are you, and how do people ensure, that seamless integration when they're developing the mobile app, so that it's going to work with your existing business infrastructure, and like really, again, squeeze all of the value out of what you're already doing and add more of that ROI in the app that's being developed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this might be a little bit technical, but essentially the way that we like to allow multiple systems to play together is we want to remove those systems logic from the core business logic of your application. If your application is a word processor and it uses Microsoft Business Intelligence, and it uses an SAP plugin, and it uses Salesforce and all that stuff, you don't want any of that to be in your application's business logic. You want the applications, and when I say business logic, it's like, what does the app do? Like the features of the application. You want the application to do what it's supposed to do, and all of the other tools and integrations, those should be details that don't affect the core experience of the user. Users shouldn't know that you're using Salesforce or anything like that. They should just know that, hey, this app is doing stuff. It's things are happening in the background, and we're able to, complete the job that we're trying to do. The reason why you want to kind of have those be details on the periphery is because when something changes, it can cause a bug in your business logic. And these bugs cause a lot of issues for businesses. Hey, Salesforce is down today. Okay, well, that means our entire app is down. And I think now we're losing money. Or, hey, Microsoft did an update over here. And because you're so tied to exactly what's happening with Microsoft, because if they move left, you have to move left too. If they move right, you have to do that too. And on a day-to-day scenario, it may not really affect you. But let's say something happens on the weekend or you have an outage or anything like that. Any one of those things um, going wrong will affect your business. So kind of removing those integrations from the core business logic and separating them and having them as we call them interfaces, that allows you to move quickly and build quickly. It also allows you to swap out tools seamlessly. Let's say, hey, we're not using Salesforce anymore. We're going to use HubSpot. Awesome. Within a day of work, one of our devs can go in and plug in exactly what we need to do, and that now you're on Salesforce. It doesn't take a 6-month build. It takes a 1 week build with testing, and everything is working exactly how you want it to work. And the next kind of super tip is when it comes to your mobile app being out in the world, yes, it's good to change things periodically and experiment, but you don't want the business to be focused on the development team. The business should be able to work and just do everything that it can do without focusing on the team. The team is going to deliver new features, make the lives of the business better. But it shouldn't be that, hey, there's a fire here, there's a fire there, there's all these things are happening. And again, the way to do that is to just separate the business logic from the periphery and make things work in a way that everybody is happy.
I mean, I'm loving all of the tips and the pieces and everything. I'm sure people are, this will be a real listen for a lot of people to be able to kind of pull all of this together. I want to drill down on one more really key point here around security, right? That's obviously a paramount concern, especially when we're talking sensitive business data that's out there. I know that you approach and prioritize security measures, in the development of mobile apps, but some advice around that as well, and like steps that business leaders can take to ensure the security of their mobile applications and the information and data that they house there.
Yes. So when it comes to, there's a couple of levels of security that we've personally seen, with not necessarily with our clients, but sometimes when we help other businesses consult. Um, Password management, right? If you're dealing with any types of database or user passwords, or it might be cool to ensure that you're using something like 1Password or LastPass or anything that makes your password like super secure, because there are times in where you may have like a data breach. And it could be because somebody in accounting had like a really lax password, and now you're getting charged for things that you don't want to pay for. Um, that's one thing. Just kind of having an organization like business level of security, and where passwords, they are super important. Use a password generator, use a password vault. The other thing is when you are choosing your database, or when you're choosing to house customer data, you have to be very, very, very careful. Now, not everybody's application is supposed to be PCI compliant or HIPAA compliant, but even for us, we approach it at that standard just in case, because those compliances they're good anyway. um, it's just good practice. It's good
Right.
practice to make sure that your database is encrypted at rest. It's good practice to ensure that any data transfer, it's not logged or it's not saved anywhere. Um, eh, it's good because you may not think that, oh, nobody's gonna hack my app or nobody's gonna capture customer data or do anything like that. You may not think that, but you should prepare for it anyway because you don't know what may happen into the future. You may end up onboarding 200,000 people in the next 3 months. And because you're moving so fast, you don't have the time to step back and say, oh, let's review our security procedures and let's figure out, like, you know, if you have downtime, take the time and invest into it because it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of money in the future. The other thing is, if you are using any third-party providers and there is a data breach on your side, you could be liable for it. So if you're dealing with Stripe and your keys and your customer stuff is kind of floating around in the internet, then you could be liable for that. Yes, they'll work with you if something happens, but you just don't want to be in that situation because it could hurt your brand, it could hurt your reputation, and it can put you in a space in where you're dealing with problems that you don't want to deal with.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just that stuff that nobody needs. Nobody roadmaps for that part of their journey, right? So avoiding that is incredibly key. Ken, crystal ball time for you.
Oh,
Do you see any emerging technologies that you find like particularly exciting in the realm of mobile app development? Do you what do you anticipate kind of, I guess, the shape of the future of mobile app development is going to be? And do businesses need to start preparing for that change now? Is there something that's on the horizon?
yeah, I think it's going to be less mobile and more wearables. So, I have my Apple Watch, but there are going to be a lot of things that just hook into your phone. Right now, today, your phone is essentially your command center.
Yeah.
For me, I track everything like, my weight, my exercise, my sleep, everything happens through my phone. And the more data that I can accumulate, the better it is for me. So I'll buy a wearable. I'll buy if anybody's listening to this and they want to make like a sleep mask that hooks right into my phone, I'll do that, right? As as physical products get smarter, they're going to need a phone counterpart. And so even my toothbrush, it connects to my phone. So, and a lot of the times I do this for like customer research, just understanding where the space is moving. But I just think that everything will ultimately feed data into your phone and then optimize your life by doing some type of analysis on the back end, hopefully only on your phones for privacy, and then give you exactly what you need. So, yeah, wearables are going to be the new thing. I know Apple is coming out with the Vision Pro,
Yeah.
and even though it's very pricey,
Yep.
that's just the initial iteration. I think that when it comes to VR, the big thing is you have to put it on your face, right? And it's like with the phone, you just kind of have it on you and whatever. Whoever comes up with like a thing that's not as invasive, uh, then yeah, everybody's just going to use that, and
Yep.
it's going to be cool. So wearables mixed with AI, hooked to your phone as a command center, that's going to be the future.
I remember when the Vive first came out, it was like you sit in a chair and there's cords everywhere, and this thing would like
Oh
tip
yeah,
down, so, right? Like, and now we're already kind of iterating forward on how it's all going, right? So it's exciting. I mean, as we kind of wrap up here, I just sort of a really quick piece here, but maybe a final piece of advice or encouragement for business leaders, founders, our listeners that are considering mobile app development as part of their strategic initiatives. What would you kind of like to reach out and tell them? I know we've touched on so much of it, but is there kind of a closing point here that you'd like to drive home?
yeah. I mean, one, I'd always hire a professional. Even if it's not me, just take the time to choose a good team because mobile app dev is not the same as web dev. There are, even when you're choosing a designer, designing for mobile is completely different than for designing for web. ensuring that you have a good understanding of your customer. Mobile is not just like a form factor. It's also like you're outside. You're not in your house. You're waiting for the train, or you're on a plane, or you're moving. So
Right.
because of that, you have to keep those things in mind. And even when it comes to attention, right? You're doing a task, and then you get a push notification or a text message, or somebody calls you. You have to keep all of these things in mind when you're building and designing and managing and growing a mobile application. Once you have that done, then take the time to actually market it and do ASO and all these other cool things that make sense. But getting that initial, like, this one thing works, it's providing value to my customers, they're willing to pay me. Once you get that, then the sky's the limit.
Love it. Ken Vermeil, Vermilion Sky. You mentioned, hire a professional. I think anybody listening to this is going, yeah, we're just coming to you for advice and to hire here. Ken, how can they find you and get a hold of you and connect with you?
Well, if you want to build an app, you can go to vermilionsky.com. If you want to learn more about building apps and how our process may help you, you can find me on LinkedIn at Ken Vermeil. You could also find me on Twitter at Ken Vermeil. And follow us, right? There's plenty of free resources that we have that we just periodically give out. I know that we have an app idea handbook, app idea workbook, in where it takes you from conceptualizing the idea to even sketching out the initial pages, and then going out there and testing with people. All those things, we provide at our website. So reach out, and we'll help.
There it is, folks. This is the man we want to talk to here. Again, I want to take a minute. Thank you, Ken, for this amazing podcast, Mastering Mobile App Development. I have a feeling this won't be the last time that our listeners hear your voice, or at least I sure hope not. Thanks, Ken, so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan, so much for having me, and I appreciate it as well.
Wonderful. And I want to thank our listeners. We can't do what we do without you. So until we meet again with another amazing TBR episode, I'm your host, Ryan Davies. Thanks, everybody. Take care out there.
Thank you, Ryan, for this amazing episode. Thank you for joining us on the Tech Business Roundtable podcast. We hope our discussions have sparked new ideas, expanded your knowledge, and empowered you on your entrepreneurial journey. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and write us a positive review. Thank you for listening to the Tech Business Roundtable podcast show.